Good evening, Sacred Grounds.
Good evening.
Good evening, Martin.
One of the things about a feature is that it's longer than 5 minutes. And so I thought I would do, I looked through my stuff to see, well, what is it that I cannot do under a 5-minute limitation? And so I came up with 4 or 5 of them, which no 2 of which could be put together and still work in the 20-minute time frame. So I gave precedence to the one that has stood in the drawer the longest. Now is now, but back in 1968, now was very much now. And this is going to be a 13-minute one. It's about my first acid trip, which took place in Pasadena, California, in spring of 1968. It's titled The Dragon. Mama Dorothy stood on the porch with her hands spread, her arms wide and gentle as though holding tenderly some large warrior. The palms of her hands turned toward a mixed orange and lavender sky. She was fondling the head of a child grown large and invisible, whose skull had grown to envelop the small cluster of slat-board cottages around the courtyard. Holding it from the inside as if to feel it, to show it to some unknown being and to ask the being's help in protecting it. Quietly, she spoke some sounds that carried on lappings of the back of her tongue against the back of her throat, coming in waves. She brought her hands together, one under the other, moving her fingers, first as though caressing the stem of a rose between thorns, then as if showing it to someone, and then more like playing a piccolo at arm's length. Almost moaning enough to hear, she turned back into the dark house, where in the twilight only her outline could be momentarily seen through the screen door, waving a dark cloth toward a corner of the ceiling in her living room. The spell was cast. The houses of the Little Mississippi courtyard on Valley Street were safe. For as long as it lasted, the people of Little Mississippi would be the masters of their own souls. For as long as it lasted, the children of Little Mississippi would live happy lives. And for as long as it lasted, the houses themselves would be protected from bad spirits, lightning, storms, fires, and bulldozers. Such were the words of Mama Dorothy. She was younger then. She had a husband, a daughter, and a son on the way. Her love went through her family and beyond to her neighbors in the Valley Court. Like her, they had come from the South, Louisiana and Mississippi in the 30s, 40s, and 50s to work the kitchens and laundry rooms of the rich white folks of Pasadena, California. The men worked as gardeners, garbage men, janitors, and a few as butlers and chauffeurs. Little Mississippi got its name in the 30s when it was the heart of a section of Pasadena set aside for the servants of the gentry. When I came to the courtyard in the mid-60s, it was known simply as Valley Street to some and the Flash to others. Most of the residents had long since gone, and only a few remained who remembered the term Little Mississippi. Mama Dorothy was still there, San's husband, sitting on her porch, and next door old Ted, who chauffeured a millionaire in the 30s. The neighborhood, once a sizable chunk of Pasadena, was reduced to a few square blocks surrounded by light industries on 2 sides, Central Park on the east and Ambassador College on the west. I waved good evening and she smiled. David sat on Grunt's front porch before a barbecue pit, his small front yard in the perpetual shade of a large carob tree. He turned a hot dog and smiled as I went into Ralph, the house next door. He knew that today was a special day for me. At that time in my life, there was very little I was afraid of. My decision to do it had been made among friends from the Flash complex, and almost all of them were there in the living room of Ralph to see me off. Alan, the poet, and Judson, the musician, dropped in from Tugboat next door. Dick, the movie maker, passed by, and Marshall, the photographer, sent his regards. Crazy Pam, thank God, had gone by then. And of course, Bill the physicist and Aki the mathematician, Bill the violinist and Aki the pianist, and Bill the motorcyclist and Aki the chess player were there. They lived there. Captain Marvel, "You have a good journey and return home safely," admonished David. "I'll leave Major Disaster here in charge of the home front while you're gone." I raised my glass of Red Mountain wine to General Catastrophe, and Bill and Aki joined in. "To the Lees," I said. I lifted an aspirin-sized tablet with a blue layer on it to my mouth and drank. I thought for a moment of communions in Judean days, a common occurrence then, and around Socrates' cell. The warmth of the wine mixed with a moment's pause as we stood in a circle of silence. With fond farewells, I left my friends to lay in my bedroom. Bill, as a bon voyage present, had replaced the white light in my bedroom with a green one. I lay in bed in the dim green light, watching the cracks of the blood bedroom ceilings of the old house. Eyelids closed momentarily as I fell past a still not understood vision of a flapper woman of the 20s, young and laughing with tinny music playing in the background. When I awoke, the cracks before me began to take on the aspect of dark lines waving in a gentle but uneven fashion. I turned over in bed and bundled up in the covers, knowing that the metamorphosis was about to begin. In time, after a darkness, I emerged as from a cocoon and knew the lines to be a web. Suspended by the web, I was alone in a pregnant time. Something, instinct told me, was coming, though I noticed I was not trapped or struggling. I say I now, though it was not I or it, but the experience. There were no thoughts, but the instincts behind the thoughts. They communicated to me of the coming being in insect form. Details of sight and feeling vanished and faded. It came in beetle form, different and indifferent. Equals met, not of the same species, but of the same order of evolution, indifferently. There was not fear, there was not concern. We had no business with one another as food or as protection. We coexisted in indifference. It went away, a transition occurred, and I encountered what I knew to be a member of my own species, a bee. As a bee, the me was measured almost entirely in terms of what it was doing for the colony. There was an awareness of myself, a bee, and a slight sense of self next to the awareness of self as a functioning part of the colony. But the committing drive toward the colony was so many orders of magnitude more important than the joy or sensation of working for the colony became the currency of life experience, the measure of worth of existence. You, sitting by the fireside in contemplation, might wonder at Mao's ideal societal structure, a giant colony of 5.5-foot bees. Such thoughts could not fit the shell in that frame, although the stereoptic effect of multiple bee eyes did not exist for me. All cognition is now, in retrospect. Once again, reality faded. Whether bee or beast or bee or both, I was back in the web again. A sense of excitement grew that looking at one way could be interpreted as dread. It was coming. The two previous encounters had given me membership in the insect world. The spider would test if I could stay. Realization does not imply an understanding, only an intimate involvement with. Any cognitive or analytical attempt to describe the confrontation fails by its own nature. The insect before me, the bee was me, the bee was me, and now the spider challenged me. Beyond spider was nirvana, no conflict in a sea of constantly moving, all-encompassing self, no unknown beyond the unknown to which all flowed. Unseen, a vein of life larger than an umbilical cord flowed from me to it and back. The quick that livens myself had extended into and enlivened it, feeding its life functions. Whether evil or not, the spider, totally indifferent and capable of destruction, the id, the evil, the unmoving face, approached me. Fear is a state of anxiety turned in upon itself. Pools of anxiety formed in me, but realization dispelled fear with a shake. My will on top transmitted to the spider, "Yes, you are me. Come unto me, destruction or life, I accept you as part of me. This mixture of me only developing will stretch itself and strain and pulsate within the ether of time." With that recognition, I became, like the collection of the Tao, a whole being, containing dark within the lightest section and light within the darkest section. Concentrating on the spider, through the spider, I perceived within a steam or mist the figure of what could only be described as like an alligator's head, with yellow eyes aglow. This is the core of my inner self. This is the dragon. With the realization made there was no other self-distinction, the energy panned then to my own physical transformation. It began with a segmented body containing 3 parts. The below diaphragm section was easy. The thorax section in waves of increasing reality was amazing. From sprouts in my chest cavity, 6 appendages grew. My physical limbs, through intense focusing on the appendages, did not exist. The final transformation was the head. With effort, straining effort, it began to transform. The mandibles began to form. I could feel changes in the basic bone structure occurring. Then, before the transformation was complete, a force within me, no more powerful than the instinctual ones, but coming from a well-chosen direction, cried out, "Stop! What am I doing?" Like Peer Gynt inside the Troll Mountain, the human part of me would not allow itself to be cast away on a total level, not even to gain membership into another order of psyche. My identity card in the human race was too valuable. My insect form discorporated. Outside the fortressed walls of humanity, I wandered the starless desert in remorse. Alone upon a wasted plain, only feeling could map the unseen, distant landmarks of my way. Driven by desire and pulled by effort, I made my way through passageways, illumined only by imagination, back among the 1,000 threads of possibility to the doorstep of humanity. I fell upon it and cried my own small, quivering river of remorse, the river that led to the puddle that was my soul, standing out against a blanket of dim stars, not unlike that of a child. After the throbbing had passed its peak, the stars grew larger, and the doorway began to move. The large, dark wooded doorway between the pillars of ancient stone began to move. My tears turned from begging entrance to pure joy as the door swung wide, and I grew as I walked through it. I was human again. My eyes opened in a green-lit room formerly of the insect world. With calm respect, my cloth-draped human hand rose to the brass wall fixture and plunged the green world into black. Joyful anticipation lifted the white bulb with jointed, flesh-wrapped fingers and held it like Prometheus watching the passage of 1,000 years, casually at arm's length. The hand turned it gently in its brass socket until, flash! The white light of intelligence danced upon the gold field of human experience, and I saw with the eyes of a young Greek in ancient times standing in a windswept cliff, looking out over the Mediterranean Sea and beyond to 2,000 years of human experience and posterity, and to 2,000 years after that. The suffering, the toils, the religions, the wars, the science, and the pride evolved as it inevitably would, and as it inevitably would, the compassion, the perseverance, the hope, the courage, the wit, the excitement, the humility, the joy, and beyond these, the intimacy of human love stood out in the forefront of some ridiculous and beautiful planetary evolutionary scale. Humanity 1, oblivion 0. I laughed a loud, light, hearty laugh that filled the room and tailed off into a happy male giggle. Swashing a little like Falstaff, I rolled off to the door to the living room. The light of the living room furnished instant understanding. Aki, who captained his own voyage, was sitting on the sofa. He was leafing through a Life magazine special on great artworks of the world, including Renoir, Cézanne, Van Gogh, and Rembrandt's. While studying a position of the Benoni defense on the chessboard, the phonograph was playing a Mozart concerto on the bar opposite. The portable TV, though silent, was showing a Star Trek episode about a galactic convention including Mr. Spock's human mother and Vulcan father. Bill was over in the kitchen corner cooking up a big pot of rice and chortling to himself. I sat on the sofa, content to rest a bit in my little cell in the large human colony, and smiled. As long as it lasted, it lasted.